Okay. My name is LeVar Smith. I am a assistant professor of political science at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been at Morehouse for about 4 years. I teach courses in comparative politics and international relations theory, primarily focusing on the politics of sub-Saharan Africa, but specifically Southern Africa, with respect to Zimbabwe and South Africa, looking at issues of democracy and political economy. I'm grateful to be here as part of the Caorc West African Research Center faculty seminar. I'm grateful to work with all of these amazing colleagues who have been with me from a variety of different disciplines and different perspectives and different colleges across the country. For a young faculty member, I think that this is essentially vital to starting your career, especially if you work on Africa, but even if you don't work on Africa and you're just in a particular type of discipline. What this program actually does is it exposes you in depth to a country that is phenomenal in terms of not only its people and its culture, its openness, but also its diversity in terms of how people actually respond to Islam, change the misconceptions of what we understand about democracy. Senegal is a functioning democracy and has a functioning economy. So from all the things that we've been able to do here, from looking at traders in places like Touba and Caorc, but also some of the cultural experiences like looking at the wrestlers, but also being in places like St. Louis and looking at the fishing industry, I think that it is an in-depth way to understand culture firsthand. And I think that that's vital in the classroom. I think that students respond better when you actually have experiences that they can relate to. So I think being able to tie my research beyond the region itself and just beyond Southern Africa to focus on issues in West Africa has been phenomenal. And I couldn't have had this experience had it not been for those who supported Caorc, who support Wara, but most importantly for all of the professors that we've been able to encounter, from Aminata So Diagne, who talked about women and representation in Islam in Senegal, but broadly in the Islamic world and what the Islamic world and its women can learn from Senegal, but also other scholars like Mahamadou Bojang, who actually works on issues of youth and popular representation and culture. So I think that these types of conversations with scholars on the ground also give us a glimpse into changing the misconceptions that we commonly find in our media, but also in some of our textbooks about what Africa is and what it will be in the future. I think that if we're looking at Senegal, it offers a promising view into what Africa will look like in the next 20 years. And as a scholar who focuses primarily on Africa, I plan on being a part of that conversation, if not leading that conversation in the future. One of the things that I plan on implementing is I do plan on implementing this in my classes, starting this fall 2019 semester. My students already have readings on Senegal in my international affairs. Comparative politics class, those are both introductory classes, but also my third world politics class, or politics of developing nations. So that way, again, I can tie in what I've seen over the past 3 weeks almost immediately. The long-term plan is actually to build a course in West African politics as part of our Africana and African American Studies programs at Morehouse. Again, we have a rich intellectual tradition at Morehouse of focusing on Africa. We've actually had a number of our graduates involved in work, be it development work or government work in Africa. So I'm just glad to be able to train the next generation of scholars who will actually come to Senegal and other parts of the continent and the diaspora to actually do some amazing stuff. So I'm looking forward to that. There has been, since 2017, a new diaspora project. Morehouse had a partnership with SIT to really look at the Murid trade diaspora in several countries, and I want to reinvigorate that. That's part of the longer project. So I'm excited about this. If you have any concerns or any questions about the future of the program, or just in general, if you have any questions about this program and you're considering applying, I would recommend that you do it. It's been an amazing experience. I've been able to just interact with a number of scholars that I wouldn't have found otherwise from a different background of disciplines, so I'm excited about that.
Okay. Hi. Tell me when. Now? Okay. My name is Sarah Pugach, and I am a professor of history at Cal State LA. I teach both African and European history with an emphasis on Germany. I think that this program has helped me to deepen my knowledge of Senegal in particular and of West Africa in general. And I think it will really help me when I go back to teaching at Cal State LA to integrate some of the lessons we've had here, both in pre-existing courses. For instance, I teach an African history survey, so I can integrate material into both pre-colonial and post-1800 history. For example, I now know a lot more about Senghor, and I can put more about him into the second half of the survey. I can talk about the Signatus, which I haven't really done before. So there are a lot of, I think, opportunities to incorporate material as well as to create new courses. For instance, a public history course that the students and I can either create a website or a podcast or pair with a NGO somewhere on the continent and create something for the community, for the Cal State LA community. I can also do a traditional research class on West Africa or upper level graduate seminar. In terms of internationalizing the curriculum, I already do quite a lot of that. My classes always contain books written by people from overseas. For instance, I've assigned So Long a Letter before. I've assigned a lot of African novels, actually, from different places. For instance, I often use Ngugi's Weep Not Child out of Kenya, or I use, actually not usually Things Fall Apart, but I use Man of the People from Chinua Achebe. I use that a lot. I've used several other novels as well, though I'm going to read and maybe use The Ambiguous Adventure at this point, so that's cool. So I also have a lot of primary sources written by people from different places. I think this would give me an opportunity maybe to think about bringing different people in to talk to the students as well. And then finally, there's the question of study abroad. And what I think might be best would be to maybe target our graduate students, because a lot of our graduate students are either high school teachers who are getting more accreditation or students who want to become community college professors. And I think that might show them, taking them to Senegal and potentially Ghana, I think would allow them to understand these cultures better and to be able to then impart that knowledge to their students. Because one thing I think is that there's a kind of woeful lack of knowledge about Africa in much of the U.S., and that's also true for my students as well. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Dr. Deanna Reese. I'm a full professor at California State University, Fresno, in the Department of History and Africana Studies. And I teach a wide range of courses, anything from lower division history survey courses to couple courses on American immigration and ethnic history, and then in Africana Studies, I teach courses on slavery, on African American women, on poverty and inequality, and I think that's about it. What motivated me to apply for the Council on American Overseas Research Centers, Caorc, is that I had never had the opportunity to go to Africa, and because, again, I've been a long-time teacher and scholar of Africana Studies, this was an awesome opportunity, and actually my colleague informed me about it. I had never heard of it before, and I was just so excited to be selected to get an opportunity to visit West Africa in particular, because the courses I teach utilize information from this particular area, and it was just so important. I had always wanted to come and take advantage and have the opportunity to inform my scholarship and my teaching with real information from the continent.
Are there any specific aspects of your experience here, what you're exposed to, that really attention?
Yes, this has been an incredible experience. It has really been a way of deepening both my respect and appreciation for the country of Senegal, for the continent of Africa. It's made me a better teacher. I think it's making me a better researcher, and also even think a better person. I feel I've learned so much. I'm still processing so much of what I've heard over the past couple of weeks, and actually visualized. This is so much more than I could have ever imagined, and I think it's so important. I probably would say one of the things that really struck me about this trip, why this is so important, is that the continent of Africa deals with so much. There's so much ignorance, there's so much misinformation, there's so much invisibility about the continent, and I think it's just been a wonderful opportunity to be able to explore, to exchange ideas. And one of the things I really so much enjoyed about this trip is the opportunity to see various sections of the country, and to go to different areas and be able to connect the history, and to see, again, the people living and experiencing daily life. And so that's been a particular joy, and I'm so glad that I got a chance to participate in the trip.
I know you presented a project on was there any specific things that drove you to that particular topic?
Yes, I decided to present on Les Señores, primarily because I was really interested in the way in which African women took some very harsh circumstances and used it to their advantage. I think that on one level, you know, like I said, it's easy to see them as concubines or as sex workers, but the fact that they were able to become savvy businesswomen and able to use that exploitation and also their relationship with colonizers to their advantage was something that I thought not only was interesting, but I also thought that was something that students should, you know, would be also interested in. And then with that, Les Señores are a really nice complement to the class that I teach on slavery and the American experience. And so I always think it's important for students to understand the ways in which both men and women, you know, experience the slave trade in different parts of the diaspora. And so again, it's been so exciting because I think that Gorée Island, yes, many people have heard of it and know of it, but I don't think, at least in terms of my, outside of my colleagues in Africana Studies, not many people know much about the island. And so I'm so excited about the opportunity to present them with more information on this topic and others, because I can use the Les Señores, I can use them in the American slavery class, but also my African American women's course as well.
Okay, rolling.
Hello, my name is Miguel Corrigan. I teach at Northern Virginia Community College, the Loudoun campus in Northern Virginia. We have about 6 campuses and about 100,000 students. My department is business, which means I look at an opportunity like this from a little bit of a different perspective. First of all, I'm trying to allow my students to live vicariously through my experiences as I get here in West Africa. I'm very interested in getting my students to sort of pay attention to everything in a culture, in a society, because cultural literacy has no real boundaries. And as business students, in order to functionally develop a strategy, within global business constraints, they need to be culturally literate. And this can take place in terms of marketing, in which you try to look at a society and divide it up into groups of people who have shared interests, yet who have economic ability to be your customers. And almost everything is relevant in this kind of experience. Second of all, I'm very interested as a business person, someone who develops commercial strategies. I'm very interested in the cost structures of the various ways that this informal economy works. Going back into history, I'm interested in the cost structure of trans-Sahelian trade. For example, if you're carrying salt across the desert, what amount of your time was spent getting this project together? What is your time worth? What does the salt cost you? What are your margins? Those kinds of issues. And at this moment, I am currently basically in real time sharing different experiences with students who are in class right now. They are watching videos of mine on how to cook different forms of Senegalese food. We're talking about different kinds of religious perspectives. I'm very interested in the Baifal. For example, today while I was shopping, I sought out a Baifal who was looking for some money and gave him actual American coffee. And he brings that back to his family. And as part of their religious and societal beliefs, coffee is a very important thing. So my students will hear about that, my students will see pictures of that, and we'll talk about how that sort of group of people fits into the Senegalese society. This is a very, very important opportunity on my part. I was here on a Fulbright Hayes scholarship 2 years ago that was led by a colleague at Boston University named Falun Gong, who is very interested in the practice of using Arabic script to investigate various forms of paper product, and a lot of it deals with commercial transactions. And so if I continue with my research interests, it will be trying to develop an understanding of my own of Arabic, how to write Arabic, how to understand Arabic, and then to go in and find, for example, purchasing documents or licensing documents, these kinds of things. So this is the future, but I see this as very much a legitimate pursuit. An organization like Caorc and their partnership with Warc, the West African Research Center, they're invaluable for someone like me at a community college in which there's not a huge budget for this kind of opportunity. And I will continue to seek out these opportunities, and I've been very impressed by the logistical understanding and expertise that I've experienced here. There have been virtually no road bumps or anything else regarding my experience.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Dr. Tria Allen. I am an adjunct professor at Pima Community College.
Hi, I'm Dr. Natasha Howard. I am an assistant professor of communication studies at Community College of Baltimore County in Baltimore, Maryland.
Yes. So the last 2 weeks we've been here in Senegal, and it has been like amazing. Especially since I teach the content African American studies at the University of Arizona as an adjunct. Mm-hmm. But then also student success, right? And so I think a lot of what we have seen is really, one, for us as African Americans, we are touching home.
Yes.
Me for the first time.
As well. Same.
And so the other thing is if you're teaching content or if you're teaching students that look like us, who may not have the narrative of successful African American or Africans or history, right? Yes. Really, that what we're seeing is the confluence of our history in a way that is not westernized, in a way that really does center who we are, our creativity, our innovation,
for sure,
without having to like apologize for it or prove that it's there, right?
For sure. Yeah, and teaching communications, particularly teaching an intro class, we talk about culture, we talk about perception, in addition to the fact I teach media classes, and so just being able to have that knowledge to take back to the students, and like just the perspectives, the different ways of looking at it, being able to do that and to be able to learn for myself, so then to be able to share that, because we have a very diverse student body at CCBC. We have over almost close to 50% are black, but we have a growing West African student population, and so it just really this experience opened my eyes and my mind to just a lot of things in terms of being able to relate to them, but then also like ideas on things I can take back and infuse into our classrooms.
So let me ask you, what was your reaction? There's an advertisement here of the little girl and the little boy, like beautiful black babies.
Yes.
Like what was your first reaction when you saw that?
I just am like, can you imagine if kids at home saw that? Like that, if that was their norm, like to be able to see that versus like, not seeing themselves in the media and the effect that can have on, your psyches, your growing up, your perception, what you think is beautiful.
Absolutely. And I mean, like, I don't want to romanticize it. There is some effects here from colonization, right?
For sure.
We see. So we see the whitening cream, we see those things. But primarily, like, when you actually get into the streets of Senegal, when you are talking about, even if it's communication, if it's humanities, if it's business, you see all of this happening on the ground. And our concepts of what it means to be a small business owner.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I saw a kid with a box of produce, those plastic bags and a weight, right? So I was like, absolutely, I will buy from you. But I think that just further, kind of counters the narrative of our ability to like take care of ourselves as African Americans, but also what it means. For students, for kids, like my own kids, like what does it mean to be a business owner? What does it mean to come from this lineage of people, the stuff that we're doing, the stuff that is criminalized, selling water that's criminalized in the United States. Here, you've got this bustling, what they would call an informal market, but then all of the things that we learned about said informal market. Right? So Dr. Clay walking us through the streets and just having casual conversations about the globalization of Senegal, but then also like what that has meant and what we are seeing on the ground. And I will also tell you, it has challenged my sense of what is wealth. Like, is the American dream
the American? Yes, because you just even yesterday, just driving by the beach and seeing people working out, like just on the beach, it's like idyllic, and I'm like, this is not what I conceptualize when I think about working out, but that's exactly what was going on. Step class, training
on the beach, right? And so even the notion of like, because I'm a vegetarian. What does it mean to be a vegetarian here? What does it mean to not have processed food? What does that look like in our everyday lives? And then I will tell you, like, the research questions that I have, like, what does it mean to be African American, right?
Yes.
In Africa.
Yes.
Because it blows my mind. I think so long we're so used to like fighting against things. Walking into a workplace knowing I'm going to have to defend my position as a woman, as a black woman, as a black educated woman. And here, this phrase that I've picked up by so many people, which is no worries. Like,
no worries, no problem.
Like, refocus yourself. You're just home. You're not someone who's black who's at home. You're just home. And so I think just for me, in taking this scholarship back, one of the things that I'm looking at is how do we help students develop identity, right? Because my role is dual. I'm an adjunct professor and an academic advisor. How do we develop faculty who are teaching content about, the continent, right? And West Africa in particular. What does it mean to actually touch the spaces?
For sure, and I think I know for myself, being interested increasingly in ethnographic studies, and particularly telling the stories of black women, I'm thinking about I keep thinking about the students I have and how they have these entire lives, like the balance that they have is different, maybe than some of the the typical the African American students I have, but then at the same time there's similarities, and so I'm really interested in like talking more and engaging in terms of like this project that I have in my mind about like just interviewing, getting these women's stories, all of their stories together, so that but so often I think the differences are highlighted, from us. Those of us throughout the diaspora, but I think that there are more similarities in there are, and it's like just being able to get those stories out.
Absolutely.
It would be phenomenal.
So you made this really, really important part about like differences. I will tell you, when I got here, the cooperative economics, like I don't care if you're Muslim, I don't care if you live from the east side, north side. The thing is, we are all Senegalese. We are Senegalese first, right?
Yep.
And so I think it was so it took a while for my brain to wrap around. Like we went to Tuba and I was like, everybody built this together, right? And so just thinking about like how I have for years had this dream of like, hey, you give $1, I give $1, and we have this central pot where if kids want to go to college, we can pay for it.
Yeah.
And everyone being like, nah, because someone's going to steal the money. Like going to Tuba and seeing the like collective economics, collective labor, because we are building towards one goal, has really challenged the notion of like, Tria, go back and take. So it's not just like impacting our scholarship, but like the way we move in the world.
Yes.
Like I've seen that it's possible, right? But then also in teaching that, how do we teach community at predominantly white institutions?
Exactly.
The story of migration, like in many ways, we have migrated home for the first time.
Yes.
How do we teach that now going back? It's not like this disconnection. And then to the similarities, like I remember first getting here and seeing like the Senegalese version of Just For Me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I went halfway around the world just to come home. Like, I remember that. Or just seeing people out in the street that I'm like, that's my cousin. Like,
yeah, exactly. I had that. I'm like, that's my college roommate.
Yes.
Exactly.
So I think in terms of scholarship though, because I definitely wanted to get into that, so many ideas around this notion of what does it mean to raise children who are not constantly fighting against the narrative of blackness and blackness is being wrong. So I'm interested in like, how do I duplicate that instead of hyper focusing on whiteness and whiteness being the standard? How do I focus on raising black students, black children, black faculty members to be like, why stop centering that?
Exactly. And like teaching self-concept, in our introduction class, I was thinking about that as well. I'm like, I really want to bring that in there, like challenge you. Like, so imagine that you are in a world where everyone looks like you, because, that's just not the reality for us.
Absolutely.
For most of us. So it's like, how would that change how you frame how you see yourself? Would that affect it at all? Like, just that ideal.
We had a professor in one of our conversation women in Senegalese. And so I am, sitting there, we were really excited to hear her speak. But one of the things that really got me was she said, I use feminism as a tool to give language to, right? So I'm just trying to describe things. It's not about identity. My identity is Senegalese. I'm Senegalese, but I'm not fighting against the same things that you're fighting against in the States. Here, everyone's black, right? And I keep going back to this point because so much of our scholarship is defense.
Yeah, it is.
It's right. And so just sitting there and then realizing like I have to decolonize my own mind in order to fully understand some of the things that are being taught. Another highlight for me was Professor Sain's lecture, his opening lecture on what does it mean to build nations.
Yes.
I'm blown. I was just like,
all
what?
the notes.
And then he came back and we did a deep read and deep study on Senghor's Femme Noire. I don't know if we've ever been positioned in literature from an American lens.
Exactly. Right?
All
I can say is yes. Like, yes. The way that he explained that and looking at it and all the metaphors within, I'm just like the levels of that.
So many levels, context, but also one thing I pulled out of that lecture was you cannot read the works without situating yourself in the culture. Otherwise, you're just reading it. And I know we had a couple of colleagues who were like, well, that's really like, that's not really feminist, but it's not supposed to be, right? Very womanist.
Very womanist.
Ways, which is situating, you know, just the black woman, not competing against anything. But I think even when reading, you know, the primary documents of our own, you know, African American literature, it has made me go, don't just read this because you're you know, your skin, you've got melanin. Read it, put yourself in the culture at the time. What is the context of the content that you're reading, that you're breaking down? And then I think we also got a lot of, faculty development was crazy on this trip.
Yes, the different ways of being able to like approach the material that you present to your students. One or the other versus, you know, and expanding from there. The other of coming, just the way I was taking note. I found myself throughout so many of the sessions just like making a to-do list. It's like, okay, for this lesson, because you know we start classes, a lot of people started classes, I start classes next week, and just reframing like activities that I've done for years, you know, just like, let me redo it this way, let me approach it from this angle, let me rework these activities for different concepts, just based off of many of the concepts within there.
And then I know I kept saying this, like, you know, if we had gone to a conference,
we would have paid hundreds of dollars.
So we had like 2 sessions. Dr. Clay did a couple of sessions. Like she did amazing with all the sessions. But student centeredness and internationalizing your curriculum. I was looking at the content, and as a part of this program, we got like a $2,000 lecture. Within the context of like the stuff that I teach. So I am sitting at Gorée Island, where the slave trade was prominent. I particularly study about this and the resistance movements within it, and school building, having a lecture about how we can center students in the curriculum that we teach. And it's not lost on me, you know, even just walking through some of our history and touching it. I think that part alone, like, forever changes you.
It does. To be able to see the things that you've read about, to see and be in the same hallways and rooms of history, and just to be able to feel that.
And then I think we were walking up to the Maison des Clèves, right? The House of Slaves. And I remember turning to you and saying, it's weird, right? We are voluntarily going in.
Exactly.
And then just having like the debriefing session afterwards, and like the heaviness, and you and I went back yesterday just to walk the island, just to like make sure that we understand that it's not just this, like this is one part of this history. But then taking that back into the curriculum, and then just being like, no, like slavery was an event. You know, a horrible, traumatic event, but it's
the definition of these people.
Absolutely.
It's not the definition of these people. And like, there's history, there's culture, there's all of that. And you know, I just found myself trying to take pictures of everything, and just hitting the point where it's like, my camera can't capture all of it. I'm not able to fully get it all.
My original idea was like, I'm going to take this 360 camera in. We're going to like film these monuments that my students may not have access to. And I don't think that I was prepared, because you know, you're like, in the United States, you're like, it's Africa, we all want to go home to Africa, right? The continent, it's not a nation
at all.
And then getting here and not being fully prepared. You know, I think for the first couple of days we were like, we know that the House of Slaves is coming. We're going to do it. You know, even seeing some of the other monuments, the Renaissance monument, like the hope, you know, of where Senegal is going, but also just a metaphor for like the hope of where the diaspora is going, but then still not being fully prepared to be in, you know, slave, where the enslaved women and children. I can never call another girl jeune fille after seeing this room and understanding And it like just very spiritual, but also scholastic as well, you know?
Yes, exactly.
So much, and like I don't know that you can really unpack, but I will tell you from this experience, I'm like, everybody in the department needs to have this experience. So not just talking about bringing students, but also bringing our faculty.
Yes, for sure. Like just coming on your own, or like that would be a great project, to be able to just like have groups of faculty, you know, from the schools be able to come and actually experience this for themselves, be able to and take away. And from different departments, there's so much that you can take away and put into different departments.
Listen, out in these Senegalese streets, there's business,
exactly,
right?
Business,
the marketplace, what it means. There's like gendered women's studies, what it means to be a woman in the market, what it means to be a woman in certain markets, informal markets. There's so many things about culture.
Education, just
yes.
like what it means, like what education looks like here, what it means to be an educator
Absolutely.
here, what that looks like.
And then I will also say, like, the support. Like, even if you come here and you're like, oh, man, I have no idea how this applies. Work, Marianne, oh, my goodness.
All
just
the resources.
The breadth of knowledge, the depth of knowledge that she has. You know, just sitting next to her and she's like, if you want to do this, it's not a problem. Oh, you need resources? That's not a problem. I'm going to connect you to, and then I would say, going a step further, we had the opportunity to learn from premier scholars.
Yes.
When do we ever have this opportunity?
Yes, exactly.
Like
they're
working,
there.
The Ajami.
Yes, all of that.
My Dr. Num, I'm probably saying that right. It's like,
okay.
I'm probably saying that wrong. But I will also tell you language. So if anyone is like, I don't speak French, I don't speak Wolof, let me tell you, if you get into these Senegalese streets, you'll be in Nanga Defin, Real Shun, or Je suis d'accord.
You'll get your bits and pieces in.
And I haven't had French since like my first 2 years of undergrad.
But you know what? I took Spanish, and I'm like leaving, like looking. I was already started looking at my college, like, okay, so what is the first intro level French class I can take? Because I'm just like, this is necessary.
Absolutely.
I want to be able to return, because I for sure want to return and be able to actually, you know, communicate with more people than not, you know.
And I will also say, like, language here is not a barrier, and I'll tell you why. The Senegalese people are so open, patient, almost like a communal loving people.
Yes.
I don't know if that's the correct phrase. So I just remember us being in the patisserie and me saying to the lady, parlez-vous anglais? And she was like, un peu. And she was like, parlez-vous français? I was like, just a little.
Be like,
and it's real bad. And she was like, no worries. So a guy who was like, don't worry, tell her what you want and I'll translate, right?
Yes.
And so even if you are working with someone who speaks Wolof, or if y'all don't share the same language, there is a heart to this city that communicates beyond language. So language should never be a barrier
at all.
And you and I both know Senegal is like two different cities. There's the day city and then there's the night city. And just walking around, like, hearing stories. And I think, again, challenging the narrative, like, oh, these African babies are poor and dilapidated. No, not at all. Like, I can't tell you how many people who have had a degree that I've been just sitting. I had a drumming lesson with a student we were in Tubacuta, who is a student, a master's level student at Shea Antadio. And I got the drumming lesson and he was like, keep practicing. I was like, yeah, I will. But then we talked about how do we build nations in an artist colony, right? A community in Tubacuta, talking about how do we build nations? How do we build nations? Meaning from the entire diaspora. How do we further, like, tear down or decolonize minds?
Yeah.
From a 23-year-old.
After a drumming lesson.
In an artist college. Like, do you know, like, and I'm sitting here like, I don't have these conversations at work.
Exactly.
How? So there is no way that anyone even through like just this conversation.
Exactly.
There's no way that you can really get a feel for one, if you're teaching content, whether it's history, humanities, gender and women's studies, business, even STEM, because I've seen some amazing things here. There's no way that you would fully grasp that unless you are here on the ground, unless you are open and willing.
You have to be. You have to have all of those.
Yes, but definitely
Takeaway.
the trip here, decolonizing, seeing things through not a Western lens, but really stripping yourself, touching the content, touching the continent, getting out there, working with people. Work was amazing. I cannot wait to do research with them.
Exactly.
Just the openness. And then leaving here with the phrase, you know, no worries. Like, it makes you dream bigger.
It does. It does. It's like, I can't even put it into words. My words are failing me today, but yes.
Yeah. So, if you ever do have the opportunity to come here, please come. And if you ever need help,
Sure.
Work is there as a resource.
Exactly. Apply.
Rolling.
Okay. I'm Stephanie Lovett, and I live in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where I teach at Forsyth Tech Community College. My main area of expertise is world religions, the introductory course for freshmen, for non-majors that surveys the religions of the world. And I applied for this fellowship because I have a great concern, which is actually the subject of my research, that the way we teach world religions privileges students to stand at a distance and gaze upon foreign people, and they remain foreign while the student remains, you know, an unmarked normal person, and everybody else is strange and different. And in the case of Islam, that's particularly complicated for my American students because they know very little about it except the fearful things they're told in the media, and so they always come in with a certain attitude, a challenging attitude about Islam, and it's not at all helped by the traditional world religions pedagogy of, the traditional textbooks that present it entirely as a Middle Eastern phenomenon. You might learn as a fact that many Muslims are not Arabs, but you would never know it from the experience of the textbook. And so I was eager to come to a Muslim majority country that's not in the Middle East and be able to help my students see an entirely different everyday Islam, that it's just people's lives who are not Arabs, where instead of being almost defensive about, oh no, your ideas about Islam are wrong, and no, they're really not terrorists, and all the things that when you try to explain it, it just makes you sound defensive, to just completely neutralize that by talking about a completely different Islamic experience. And I'm really looking forward to being able to do that. So on the seminar the past couple of weeks, I feel like I've gotten just the merest start of that. Of course, the main thing I've learned is that I don't know very much and that I need to learn so much more. I don't want to go back to my classroom and sound, be a person who was in Senegal for 2 weeks and, bought some beads and now I know everything. What I know now is that I have a large reading list that I've already ordered some books from, and I'm really going to be in search of some video resources and other things that I can do besides my own photographs to make this real for people and just show them a different world of Islam than that they, or that I had any idea existed. For myself, just on a more personal level, if you know about something only through books, real things aren't that differentiated from fictional things, which you also know about only through books. I had an experience some years ago on a bus going around a bend, and there was Mount Vesuvius, which of course I knew very much about. I was a Latin teacher at the time, and yet seeing it, I suddenly realized that in my mind, it might have well been Narnia, right? Things aren't real until they're real to you, no matter how much you know about them. So now, having been to Africa for the first time, and even though only a very small piece of it, I feel like my world has doubled in size, that all of these things that I thought I knew about are now real to me. So that's just invaluable. I mean, everybody says there's nothing like being somewhere, and it's hard to elaborate on that in a way that's novel. It's just so true. So that's just been tremendous for me being here. For my classroom, thinking about student-centered pedagogy, that's already something that I think I'm very strong on. My terminal degree has been in social justice pedagogy, where we're very concerned that we construct a liberatory educational experience for students. So the main thought I have about that might be different for me now is maybe not quite what people often mean by student-centered pedagogy, but I am thinking, pursuant to what I was saying earlier about how we present Islam, that what I'll be trying to do is center the student and this, to Americans, neutral understanding of an Islamic culture, and then getting out of the way some. So I'm centering the students and the experience and marginalizing me and the American narrative about Islam and shoving us out of the way and seeing where the students get on, being able to work with these materials and have an experience, virtually, that I hope will at least show them a little bit about what I've learned. And then help them, analyze that and process it and get things out of it. So that's my plan for the future. I'm not teaching world religions this semester, but I expect to again in the fall. And I also, this isn't just improving my pedagogy. Researching and writing about world religions is, or not about them per se, but about how we present it to students and make it real to them and make it something that will make them better world citizens. That is my main writing and research area, so I'm especially excited to continue curriculum development and theorizing curriculum that I can share with others who teach this extremely commonly taught course that's highly under-theorized, and I'm excited about being able to contribute something that might be a little bit new to that enterprise.
Okay, great.
My name is Errol Montes Pizarro. I am from Puerto Rico. I work at the University of Puerto Rico, Calle campus. We have 11 campuses. This is one of the four-year college. I teach mathematics, but I also do research on the history of African music, and especially about the dialogue between Caribbean music and African music, mostly West African, but also Central African music. I have a radio program about African music, and I teach a course on the history of African and Afro-descendant music in the Caribbean, Brazil, all the Americas, including USA. So this course I teach every 2 years. This is my second time in Senegal. I came here 10 years ago to do research on music. Was a comparison between old salsa musicians and the new generation of hip-hop musicians to compare how they conceptualize the Caribbean and US music then and now. I was motivated to apply for this program for two main reasons. One was to come back to Senegal and update my research about what is going on the musical scene in Senegal. And also because I want to take my course, the course that I teach at the university. I usually have like 20 students, most of them musicians, but also sociologists and students from natural sciences also. And then I also want now to turn this course into workshop for the community surrounding the university, and especially with groups that are working against racism, so that people can understand what is Africa now. Not this abstract concept of Africa, but what is the real Africa, what's going on, and how people in Africa think about the Caribbean. And then I will learn, in this workshop, I will learn also how people think about Africa before taking the workshops and after taking the workshops. So I will do like a pre-test and post-test with people in the community. They are not university students. So, but mostly musicians that I want them to learn about African music, and that was the main reason I applied for this. And also, I was interested of learning about religion and immigration in West Africa, because this has some musical consequences also. The relationship between music and Islam has always been tense, because Islam, in some other countries, the relationship between popular music and the religion is not always smooth. So in Senegal it's different, because you have many musicians that incorporate Muslim topics or themes in their music, or phrases from the religion in the music that sometimes are not obvious. So I wanted to learn that part, because that area I didn't know much about the relationship between music and religion, because I didn't know much about the religion in Senegal, especially the Muslim religion. So I was very much interested in those areas. The study abroad program, it will be hard to do in Puerto Rico, because we are suffering austerity measures that are very hard on the university. In 5 years we will lose like 60% of our budget. But then at the same time, there are people through my radio program, many people have contacted me that they want me to organize a trip, a learning trip to Senegal about music and culture. So I might organize mixed travel with students and with people that are not in the university. And also it occurred to me that I might try to get some private funding from foundations in Puerto Rico to bring students from Senegal to Puerto Rico. I know that to get funding for that is harder than to get funding for study abroad, but I think it might be possible, because there are several organizations in Puerto Rico that might sponsor some students from Senegal that might go to Puerto Rico and meet students there. And that might even make it easier then to convince the administration to fund a study abroad program to our students. So we will make this contact. That was the main reason for coming here, and also to reconnect with Senegal after 10 years. Also, I didn't know the work of West African Research Center, and I think that now that I know this resource and this institution, I will be able to collaborate with intellectuals here that I wasn't able to do that before, because the professor at Sheikh Anta Diop University that was my contact passed away 4 years ago. So I lost my contact with intellectuals here, because I had those connections through him. Now, using work, I might come back to use work as my base and do research on the National Archives, because I was told that there is a section of that archive that is completely dedicated to music. So I might come back and then try to do research on that. It's a wonderful center. I think, I'm not sure, but I think it's almost unique in West Africa, this institute, especially in French Africa. I don't know if any other center or institute like this one. I know one in Ghana, but it's different. This one is different because it sponsors more international collaboration, and I think that will be very good for our university to make some kind of alliance or collaboration, official alliance, so we can interchange people back and forth.
My name is Mary Altair, and I teach at SUNY Erie.
Okay. And my name is Patrick Malloy, and I teach at Hawkeye Community College in Iowa.
And what do you teach there?
I'm responsible for Middle East class, Introduction to the Middle East and African Studies,
as well as an occasional anthropology and Western Civ course. And yourself?
Very nice. I teach psychology and anthropology. In fact, I'm the only anthropologist on all 3 campuses.
Okay.
So I'm responsible for all of the cultural instruction. And we are attempting to globalize our curriculum. So this experience, first, is going to allow me to do that easily. And second, speaking from my own experience, even in anthropology, where we study other cultures, every ethnography is based in rural Africa, in traditional Africa, and does not represent the modern Africa of today. When I came here, this experience has broken every stereotype I ever held of Africa. And Senegal is amazing in its uniqueness, and that really has come through to me. What did you learn?
Well, again, I've been to Senegal once before, so I had a little bit of sense of what to expect. But yeah, it's Dakar is just this remarkable place, and it's always fun to be in a, when people think of Africa, they don't think of world cities, world-connected cities, and this is definitely one of those.
And it's progressive,
yeah, very
and
much so.
open, and welcoming. And having been in Pakistan, it is very interesting to see the different side of Islam that's practiced here, and how Islam and Christianity and the ethnic groups are so able to work together. I think that's going to bring Africa into the future if that can continue.
Right. No, I think that's one of the useful things for me. I do the Middle East class, and I've always struggled a bit with the discussions of Sufism, but I think I'll be able to use what we got from Tuba and some of these things in that class, and that should be really interesting.
Yeah, much more.
Just that wide variety, it allows to kind of crack open. The default is all too often sort of Islam is practiced, particularly in the Arab Middle East, and this really kind of gives
which is the minority in Islam.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
exactly.
Yeah. Plus, I do plan to do a West African cultures class, or possibly a diaspora class.
Right.
And the experiences here and the information here will be foundational for that. And also, I would love to do a class on women and women in Africa, different roles, different perspectives.
Yeah.
I think that would be a nice class to offer my students.
I'm going to propose a class on migration. In the Africa class, just because of the stereotypes, I tend not to go into the difficult issues. The one difficult issue I go into is AIDS. But I had touched, for example, the catastrophe that's been taking place in the Mediterranean with, just the other day there were yet more would-be migrants who drowned in the sea. So I want to do a class on migration that would really kind of globalize the question of migration, not kind of take it out of what most of the students would assume is largely Central America. We've got almost 300 people from DRC, from Democratic Republic of Congo, in my community. And so finding ways to put those students together with those, and also talk a bit more about sort of migration as it's been unfolding globally.
And continuing to unfold from Africa.
It's going to be a major issue for the entire 21st century, especially as climate change.
Yes.
It starts to bite ever further.
Yes.
So it's a big issue.
My students believe that all migrants come from Mexico.
Yes.
So I would love to be able to show them a different side of that as well when we talk about migration.
All right. Well, yeah, I think this has been a really remarkable program, and I was so impressed with WARC. That is such a remarkable institution.
WARC got amazing scholars to come and speak with us,
did.
and Caorc organized this seminar better than I could possibly have imagined, especially with Dr. Cham and things. I am speechless. I want to come back. I want more faculty to experience this because it's revolutionized the way I look at things.
And if anyone should have any qualms or being nervous about such a thing, you'll quickly see that it's a foolish fear. This is you are so well taken care of. This is such a lovely place that I'm sure you will really enjoy it. And download a Wolof manual and start practicing.
Learn Wolof, learn French.
Learn some French
I'm working on French now.
Any Wolof words?
Wolof words?
Jerejef.
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 Trying to think of something good. All of the good ones I know are greetings, and
Yeah,
all I know for
greetings,
thanks is
thank you.
Jajef.
Jerejef.
Yes.
All right, great. Rolling.
Hi, my name is Alex Pierre of Spelman College, and I teach African Diaspora Studies, and most specifically 2 courses, African Diaspora in the World 1 and African Diaspora in the World 2, which are core courses that all freshmen, have to take. And it's been a pleasure being part of the seminar. What I like most is, having all that knowledge, expertise, in one place, which really brings, extensive overview, in-depth, overview of Senegalese culture, from religion to the arts, literature, a little bit of the visual arts, music, so forth and so on. So it's been really beneficial to me to be part of that and get all that information in that time period. One other aspect also that was interesting was having the ability to travel and not being stationed only in Dakar, but seeing the diversity of the country as much as possible, from an urban setting to rural setting and everything in between, and also interacting with cross section of the population. What stood out to me, because most of my research is on the arts, how people in the diaspora respond and to whatever they're faced with from an artistic standpoint. So anytime there were any performance, performative aspect of the Senegalese society through music, dance, poetry, I really enjoy those such as our first day, the opening gala, with the performance of the artists there, and those 2. Not only did we have 1, but 2 griots. Was really fantastic. And then when we went to Sokone after the communal meal, having the members of the family and the community, perform and also invite us into joining them in the dancing, and some of us, played some of the instruments. So that was really that was key to me. The way I plan on using the information is infusing, those 2 courses that I mentioned, and I'm thinking, for example, with ADW 111, when we discuss, slavery and the slave trade, using our visit to Gorée Island to share with the students additional information, especially again thinking of the different cells where the enslaved Africans were kept, in terms of gender, but also the age of the different captives, and that the experience of the door of no return, being able to share, provide visual to the students, I think will make a difference. One other aspect, that is discussed in our course that first semester is Islam. So I think we had enough, information there again to supplement the text that we use in the classroom. And in terms of the second semester, the second part of the course, which is all on colonialism, resistance. We spend time discussing the New Negro movement, from the Harlem Renaissance to Negritude and Negrismo. So it was interesting to have Dr. Sen share with us his reading of Senghor's, 2 poems, one of which we use, Femme Noire, Black Woman, in the course. So all of this will be, all the information will be beneficial in terms of, again, and enhancing the information we provide to the students, and again, providing additional visual and also ideas. One other aspect in terms of the curriculum is now my desire to develop a new course on the scenarios, after meeting with Ariane, I think that's her name, Madame Ariane Rio, who's descended from the Signories, so it will be interesting to think of we know Spelman is an all-women institution, and there's always a desire to really be sensitive to that in terms of the curriculum, the classes that we're developing. So I think such a course will be of interest to the students, discussing power, women and power on the one hand, but also as one of the participants suggested, making some connection between sex trafficking, in a diasporic through a diasporic lens and of sorts.
You wanted me to say what I teach as well, huh?
Okay, go ahead.
My name is Christine Farias. I teach at the Borough of Manhattan Community College, which is one of the 24 schools in the City University of New York. The Borough of Manhattan Community College, known as BMCC, is one of the largest schools, having almost 27,000 students coming from minority and underrepresented communities. I teach economics. My field is environmental economics, though my focus is sustainable development. And I came here to Senegal as a learner to try to understand the dynamics of African traditions and sustainable development, since that is an area that I am interested in. However, the interconnection, the interdisciplinary and the interdependence of religion and migration and diversity and culture, along with ecosystems, business, and global sustainability, almost comes alive the moment you step off the plane in Senegal. The whole idea of bringing or creating these engaging classrooms is intriguing to me, because teaching economics or teaching has to be student-centered. And I see Senegal and the experiences we've had as providing these engaging outdoor classrooms where it's bringing the real world into the classroom and taking the classroom into the real world. And I see the way the program has been designed enable that to happen, where you kind of get a feel for the busyness of the city, the informal and the formal markets. The amazing aspect is the welcoming and hospitality of the people, which is something you don't see in the developed world very often, because it's almost the community, the spirit of community and simplicity that to me is very powerful. And that's the kind of students we have in our college, in our university. And it is my goal in undertaking this or accepting to go on this seminar, for which I'm really grateful and thankful to Caorc and Wara, and to Professor Sen and Professor Cham and all the other faculty and people that we've engaged with, that brought such different flavors to the whole experience, which I think has been enriching for me, as well as engaging with other faculty who were on this seminar as well. And so right away I intend to bring Senegal alive in my classroom to the students when I teach various courses in economics, microeconomics and macroeconomics, which are key courses for our business majors and our criminal justice majors. And we also have an economics associate's degree that we are again trying to engage students in critical thinking and analysis and writing and reading. And I see Senegal again in West Africa providing that opportunity. And so besides immediate putting this into practice in my classrooms, where I do have a global perspective, which I think is very, very important, but this brings more student-centered, more brings the real world into the classroom again. Also, I intend to engage some of my faculty so that they can begin to see value in global experience that's outside their comfort zone. And of course, I'm definitely looking at creating what I like to call a field study of the economics of bringing together religion and migration and diversity, as well as business and the environment in this Senegalese perspective of what it means to be sustainable. Because as I traveled through, starting in Dakar and going into Touba and then going to St. Louis and then Toubacouta and back to Dakar, you see the changing landscape. How do you balance that, maintaining the richness of Senegal in terms of tolerance and conversation and peace, which I think is so rich, and so that's something that you can experience only on the ground, and so I do hope that I can make that happen soon. The other side is also the richness of being able to do research with students that I do as well, and I can see developing that partnership with the West African Research Center, the Center for Ecology, which Professor Cham, straight away told me maybe you should go across and check that out, and also just being here and experiencing how people are dealing with the struggles. It's a dilemma, but at the same time holding on to what is truly Senegalese and what is truly what Senegal is. I think is something that takes a lot to manage, because you do not want to lose what you have, and I think I'm really thankful to again Caorc and Wara for making this happen. And,
now, in terms of engaging your colleagues to, for example, share experiences that would contribute to internationalizing or enhancing the internationalization efforts at your institution, what kind of forum do you have at your institution?
Okay.
to
Right. Our institution is going through a process what they're calling Designing for Success, and we do have a global perspective, which is extremely important. We do have a major study abroad program where our students get funded 60% of their the cost, and we're looking at making that, faculty-led programs are supported, where we don't yet have a program to Senegal, so that's an opportunity. And so it's faculty-led, and I have done a program to Costa Rica, and again I see similarities and differences because each culture is rich. So in terms of the international curriculum, we are again looking at study abroad programs, which would count for credit, so students can engage in that. The only issue is again finding the right mix of students, being able to enable them to take these courses, which would probably be a winter program, kind of similar to the time we've come here. And so that's definitely something that would be supported by our college and our department. Yeah. And then again, with the faculty, we have faculty from Africa as well. And we have so that might be also an opportunity to make that happen. Yeah.
Great.
Great.
Okay. Go ahead, Roland.
Hello, my name is James Kraft. I'm from Austin, Texas, and I am a professor of philosophy and religion at Houston-Tillotson University. And I was so happy to be part of this program. It has encouraged me to think deeply about new strategies for interfaith cooperation, religious diversity, and techniques for presenting material in the classroom, material as regards African history and traditions and spiritualities. So I'd like to say a little bit more about what I got out of the program. And I've been concentrating on my thing, which is the epistemology of religious disagreement. And I've talked to many of the colleagues here in the program about interfaith cooperation and religious diversity. And I've been trying to figure out what are the strategies here in Senegal for dealing with deep religious disagreement. And sometimes I can be annoying, but I test out the strategy that I have found important, which is to bring up some of the more contentious things in the spiritualities of Islam, Christianity. I haven't had a chance to bring up difficult things, challenging things within African traditions, or Buddhism or Hinduism. But I have had a really good time talking to people who live here, visiting all the places that we went to, Tuba and South and the mangroves, and we got a very good introduction to Senegal, excellent introduction, the best you can do in 2 weeks. I mean, of course, you can't get a whole sense of everything. We didn't go to the east of Senegal. That would have been pretty cool, but you can't do everything. We did some of the main things. And what I learned from the program is that Senegal is different than I had imagined, and different in that there's quite a bit of interfaith cooperation here in Senegal, actually a tremendous amount, but there's a particular strategy that's used here, and I think it's a great strategy. It's a great vehicle to interfaith cooperation and tolerance. There are some things that I would like to tweak, but it's a great model for how we, as a world civilization, can address interfaith issues, conflict, and cooperation. The strategy, as I understand it, is the perspective. I mean, I don't know if it makes sense to call it a strategy, but the way of dealing with interfaith conflict, interfaith cooperation is more to address people as fellow Senegalese, as fellow citizens, and of course there's the part in the Senegal Constitution that says that everybody has a right to choose their own religious orientation. So there are a lot of things that go into this strategy, this way of dealing with interfaith conflict and interfaith diversity, deep diversity. But the Senegalese way is more stressing the camaraderie that you have as a Senegalese citizen, and the friendships that you have, the kinship, and letting the contentious religious differences, let them go into the background a little bit. But what's really nice, what I found out, is that people acknowledge those contentious points in Senegal. They realize that there are very difficult differences, but they have a way of keeping the friendships and the commitments and the interrelatedness, even when there are these deep differences. And I find it interesting. Personally, I would like to see people be more upfront about their religious differences and the sources of contention. But I really like the Senegal model and vehicle to interfaith tolerance and cooperation. Hopefully I can incorporate some of that into my own work. Actually, I plan on writing an article on different versions of pluralism. The Senegalese model would be one version. The version of pluralism called civic pluralism of Interfaith Youth Corps would be another. My own pluralism, which I call cognitive pluralism, would be another. And so Senegal would be part of that article that I'm thinking about working on starting. I would love to come back here to Senegal to do more research and explore more the interfaith cooperation that exists here. I would like to go to the eastern part of Senegal. I would like to go and talk to people in the villages that we went through. We did a certain amount of that, but I would like to talk to more of the locals who haven't necessarily been educated, but they somehow get along with the Christians in the community. I saw so many Christian churches as we were going through the countryside, and I never saw that in South Africa when I was visiting South Africa. There was always so many Zulu huts and kraals, and I didn't frequently see Christian churches. But so I'd like to come back and do more research, and in terms of incorporating some of the things I learned here into the classroom, I'm always going to do that. I mean, I learned some things here that are really important, and when I talk about African traditions, I'll always be able to incorporate them. I've been to South Africa, so I have a perspective from South Africa and Zululand. In Zululand, there's much more traditional African ways than in Senegal, so there's a nice comparison between Senegal and South Africa, and that's certainly what I would want to pursue in the way that I teach African spirituality in my classroom on world religions. And I have a class on global epistemology where I would explore the different ways that people come to know what it is that they know, and different strategies between the different types of pluralism. So these are some things that I got out of this wonderful program. I can't believe that Professor Chom organized it so well. I mean, I know that I could never do such a thing. He worked us pretty hard, but all the work that he gave us was very much oriented to the goal of giving us an intensive course on Senegal spirituality, religion, refugee issues, and it's the best 2-week course I've ever had, introducing me to a topic, an important topic, an important culture, important for me now, even more important for me. So for all these reasons, I deeply appreciate having been here and having been chosen to come here and interact with the colleagues here, interact with the locals. When I first came here, I was afraid. I was thinking, oh man, they're going to see this American. They're going to want to try to pickpocket me. But now, perhaps I'm a little too trusting. I took almost 100-mile trip to Sally on my own with the taxi driver. I didn't know him before, but I just trusted him, given my newfound respect for Senegal. So it's been a wonderful experience, an experience that I will bring to my students and always value as one of the most interesting and valuable 2 weeks that I've ever had in my life.
So what's your name? What institution do you come from, and what do you teach?
Okay, my name is Monica Ambalal, and I teach music over at Merritt College in Oakland. And Sobia, where are you at?
My name is Sobia Salim, and I teach English and ESL at Loney College in Fremont, California.
So some of the things I think we wanted to talk about were what we gained from our experience here in Senegal. For me, the first thing that I noticed right away is that this breaks down all of my preconceived notions of what I had about coming to West Africa. My first time here, I've never gone anywhere past North Africa or Uganda, for example. So for me, I found that people here, the community, were more welcoming about religion, about what I was wearing, the way I'm speaking, looking. There's no judgment. So this was one of the things that I really enjoyed the most, was knowing that I could feel comfortable. Every morning I was running and nobody cared what I looked like. I was jogging with the children, with the people. Sometimes people would join me for a jog. And so I felt so welcomed here. This was really important. For you?
Yeah, for me it was really interesting. A lot of my research centers around Islam and the heterogeneity of Islam, and even though I'm born in a Muslim country and I've visited several Muslim countries, including some in North Africa, I'd never had this experience here, where you see this religious inclusivity, you see this sharing of religions, you see, I hesitate to use the word tolerance, but you see this just congeniality, right? This friendliness. And for me, it was really interesting to see a different perspective on Sufism, because I had understood Sufism in a very different way in the States, and then Sufism here is something quite different. So it was really interesting for me to see that. And it was really interesting for me to think about what I could take back to my home institution. I thought a lot about it. I definitely want to take a lot of this back into the classroom in terms of identity and where identities intersect and the layered sense of identities, because here in Senegal, I notice people speak multiple languages. They have multiple backgrounds. Parents can be from different ethnicities. You can have friends and family members of different religions. And so that's something I thought about in terms of my students, but I also thought about what can I take back to my fellow faculty? What can they really learn from this? And I think a lot of faculty, or a lot of people in the States rather, have this black and white notion of religions, of ethnicities, of languages, of all these different layered things. And I think this is something I would like to take back.
And I think for me, with the same trope, you know, another thing that I was educated on was the brotherhoods, the idea of the brotherhoods. In the United States, we have such a negative connotation about what a brotherhood is because we hear about terrorism and all of this. So coming here and actually interacting with some new friends that I made, they were explaining to me, oh, this is like part of the people that represent our neighborhood. They take care of our community. And I realized this is just a very minute percentage represented in American media, and that we're not seeing the truth, that this really is a beautiful thing for communities here in Senegal, for example. And again, like she said, just to clarify what Sufism is, and because we have these, again, these ideals that it's whirling dervishes and the Turkish practices. And so for us to see what Sufism is and how it's practiced here, and again, like you said, inclusive, for me this was really amazing, learning about the Murids, and how this history is so ingrained in the culture, but yet it doesn't prevent people from choosing their own paths. That was beautiful for me. So
yeah. I mean, one thing I got out of the lectures and workshops, and I know we talked about this a little bit, and the group did, is the fact that Senegal is really a meeting point of sorts. We see this with the Signares and Saint Louis, right? They're a meeting point. They're a bridge between cultures, between ethnicities, between you know, economic movements, right? Senegal is a meeting point between, you could say, Africa and the Americas, right? You see it as a meeting point of religions, of animism, of Islam, of Christianity, of Catholicism. And so this was really interesting to see it be a meeting point, but there isn't really much conflict, right? It becomes syncretic instead.
No ethnic conflict, no internal religious conflict, right? And so, and that's another stereotype that we've been so given from our media, is that, oh, you know, you're going to West Africa, there's going to be ethnic group fighting, nothing here, nothing but peace. I felt safer here over any day in Oakland, walking on the street, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I have to say, one of the things for me too is when we learned about the Ajami scripts, you know, seeing how people use vocabulary, use scripts to actually adapt to their own, you know, vernaculars. you know, and throughout, this is something I would be interested in. It makes me want to delve into my Arabic studies even more.
It's the layering that we were talking
Right.
about, right? Ajami
Right.
allows you to layer Arabic and Islam with native languages,
Yeah, with
other
indigenous,
texts. Yeah,
and that's so beautiful. That's kind of what the culture is, right? So that really stood out to me. And then the most important thing for me on this trip was the educational panel. We had a day where they spoke to us about the education system here in Senegal, and so it was nice to see how people mentioned, like, yes, it's based on some of the French system, the lycée, the primary school, and all this, but we were completely educated on the way the university works and how, well, obviously the grading, I think we remembered this, but how these professors are diligent and they're good caliber professors, and they're working with limited resources to provide excellent education to these young students. Yeah.
I think I felt really blessed and lucky, and I think a lot of us did. And not only did we get lectures and workshops inside the classroom, inside, you know, the conference room, but we also got to do these field trips. I think it was something for me very different to actually go to the Great Mosque of Touba, to go to the library and see the text. Like, I just wanted to stay there for a month and just delve through the different versions of the Qurans, delve through the aesthetic appeal that they had, see how they were unifying, look at the different Qurans that were given to Sheikh Ahmadou Baba, all these things, right? Going to the actual Signares, you know, hotel in San Luis, speaking to someone who was a descendant from them, right? Seeing what kinds of recycling they were doing, what kinds of programs they were creating, right? Going to Bakuta, like all of these things, I think made the experience much more real. And so it's just trying to figure out how we're going to translate this experience to the other people who haven't been
back
here.
to the classroom.
Yep.
And me coming here too, I've noticed, you know, I've had a chance to interact with people in the community, and I am fortunate because I can speak French. And it's interesting, I've met people who will mention the things we've studied, so Senghor and Wad, and they'll talk to me about politics because the young people are interested in these things here, and I think they want to see the better of the country. And it was so lovely to hear that. So everywhere I went, and I'd say, oh, WARC, people knew WARC immediately. They knew it right away. And they said, oh, and if they didn't know, they said, wow, this is a really great program. They're teaching me my history. So thank you.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to also be able to feel and hear Wolof, to feel and hear French.
I love the Wolof.
Oh my gosh. Jerejef. Jerejef, thank you.
All right, that's great.
Is that good?
Okay, rolling.
Hello, I'm Curtis Keys, Junior Assistant Professor of African American Studies and History at Olive Harvey College, which is one of the city colleges of Chicago colleges. And I'm here in Senegal, and I'm very happy to be here. And I would like to say that this has been an extraordinary seminar. And what I'm taking from the seminar is the richness in terms of learning about Senegalese people, the country itself. In particular, the religious diversity that's here. Obviously, our seminars, we focus quite a bit on the Islamic tradition heritage here, but also the African traditional religious practices as well as Christianity. And one of the things I'm going to take back to my classroom as an educator is for students to learn more information about Senegal. I'm thinking about an assignment. One, I'm going to have them locate where Senegal is at. Fortunately, there's a lot of misunderstanding about the continent of Africa, in that it is a continent, not a country. So the other aspect, of course, with being afforded the privilege to participate in this faculty seminar with the Council of Overseas Research, and definitely with the input and guidance of the West African Research Center, it's been extraordinary. I'm definitely looking forward to coming back. I'm definitely looking forward to help build a strong study abroad program where I can bring my students here. That's the first thing I'm really going to be doing when I get back to my campus. On the other scale, of course, being African American, coming to the motherland truly has enriched my understanding and context to my ancestral homeland. So, if anything I can say is that this truly has been a great experience, and I look forward to other opportunities.
My name is Terrence Johnson. I am a professor at Montgomery College in Maryland, Silver Spring, Maryland. I teach African history, African American history. I also teach United States history as well as 20th century world history. I'm very interested in making sure that individuals from my college, students particularly, as well as faculty and staff, travel. What I got out of my trip to Senegal is I got a better understanding of the challenges that an African nation faces, but as well as some of the great solutions that they have solved themselves. And also what I've also gained from this trip is ideas about cooperation that I can take back to my country that Americans might consider using that have been successful in Senegal. For example, their ability for Muslims and Christians, in spite of some of their ideological differences, to be able to work together to build a great nation. Okay, is there some? Okay, you want to ask another part of the question?
Yeah, any specific particular aspects of the lectures, seminar, the topics, issues that really caught your attention, attracted you, that you would like to use and incorporate either short term or long term?
Okay. One of the things that really captured my attention was the indigenous civilization, the indigenous languages that were and scripts that were developed by the Senegalese that have in the past been considered, gibberish. That these forms of languages, Wolof and maybe even Serer and some other languages that survived not only in the Senegal, but also survived in the Americas. I'm very interested in that because I worked on Gullah culture, and being in Senegal saw a lot of relationships between these African cultures that survived in the Americas and those that also survived in Senegal. And so my short-term goals and for classes is to include this, like my upcoming African history class, is to include, when I talk about the rise of empires in West Africa, I want to include more of not just the kingships, but also some sense of what people who are not kings and queens were doing. And some of what I also want to include is some of the literary traditions, as well as some of the like I said, some of the medical, because I think that one of the things I saw in one of our lectures was that we have from some of these texts that many that have not been deciphered yet, or either they're in other languages, but as they come into languages like English and French, a lot of Western scholars will be able to incorporate them into our curricula. That gives us a wider view. So my long term is to make films that emphasize this for people, so that other teachers can use this information in their classes.
Talk a bit about internationalizing your curriculum, particularly at the college that you teach, and how this experience, your stay in Senegal, would also contribute towards the effort.
Okay. Yes. It's important to internationalize classes because we live in a global world, and we can no longer think of ourselves as isolated, because we're not. We interact economically, we interact politically, we interact militarily. I became very aware of the fact, for example, that Senegal has this long, peaceful tradition, and so oftentimes when there are conflicts in other parts of the world, Senegalese delegates are sent to help solve the problem because they're very good at negotiation. So my idea is the whole idea of this globalization, and what I plan on doing short and long term is to, first of all, for the classroom perspective, is to talk, even though I'm going to probably be teaching African history from the beginning to 1800, what I want to include as a result of being here and for these 2.5 weeks is I want to, even though I'll talk about the ancient past, I want to talk about how it relates to things that are contemporary in this Senegalese society. And I think that will be, for many of my students, very relatable, so that they don't see African history as something that's dead, happening in the past, but see that past traditions in Africa and in Senegal are very much continue. They continue, and I have seen many of those kinds of traits and things that people might have done in the past, but you see some of those things still occurring now. Long term would be is I would like to have, because we have two international studies sort of like departments. We have our international study abroad program. We also have our Global Humanities Institute. Okay. And in fact, it was the Global Humanities Institute who alerted me to the grant, the possibility of traveling to Senegal through the two programs, right? And so I really much think that there needs to be, like, maybe I'll give workshops throughout the year, the next few years, whenever, not only at institutions, but I hope to also have workshops in our communities to get people who, they may not be in college at the moment, they may be working people, but encouraging them to travel and perhaps giving them, contact people to say, okay, do you want to travel in a group? Here's how you might be able to do it. So, any other questions?
That's it.
Okay.
Okay, rolling.
My name is Dr. Charity Clay. I currently teach sociology at Xavier University of Louisiana in New Orleans. And I participated 2 years ago in 2017, and this year I was fortunate enough to come back as a co-lead, a faculty co-lead for the Senegal Faculty Development Seminar. First, I would like to thank Caorc for investing in me and allowing me to kind of add some things to the program that we didn't have when I participated. Specifically, in addition to, just kind of helping facilitate the activities and events and the lectures, I created 5 workshops specifically for faculty development for my colleagues who wanted to internationalize their curriculum, be more student-centered, start trying to put together maybe faculty-led study abroad programs from the point of inception to hopefully being able to launch them. One of the things that excited me was I didn't give myself credit for some of the things that I had retained from the first time I came. Right? So as I was seeing things that were familiar and even some new things that I had been kind of studying between the time I left and the time I came back, I was able to kind of point out some things to some of the participants, maybe if they didn't hear the tour guide or some things that I had picked up that I had asked questions about when I came. So that was one of the things that I didn't give myself credit for, but I retained a lot of the information, and I credit that to the lecturers we had, the kind of bonds that I was able to build with the people that I came with to continue having conversations at night in the evening. So when we left wherever we were having our event or our lecture, that wasn't the end of these academic or intellectual conversations. Another thing I really noticed that was different from participating, that I didn't get to see, that I got to see kind of from the facilitating role, is how seamlessly the work staff handles everything that gets thrown at them through a study abroad. So as a participant, I was taking everything in, I was focusing on the content, but this time I kind of tapped into the logistics and how the program actually ran. And I just give all the credit to work for being able to find alternates or any suggestions we had. I know there was a situation where we had stopped to get, this time, we had stopped to get some sandals, from some handmade sandals, and one of the participants, they didn't have his size. And, the staff, the work staff, Dr. Cham arranged for them to actually be brought to the hotel that we were staying at here in Dakar. And those type of things that you don't necessarily think about, they're really the things that allow participants to focus on the reason why they're here. They don't have to worry about the simple things like changing money or, making sure I can get in touch with my family. The work staff was just very, very, very seamless. And I say that because some of the things that I was able to notice as a co-lead that were potential issues were resolved before, they were able to derail the trip or anything. So I really, really, really give credit to the staff at work for being able to manage, multiple languages, multiple different personalities, multiple different interests and fields of study to make sure that, everybody was able to benefit from some things that we did on the trip. I think my workshops were helpful. I appreciate the fact that the participants were from so many different fields of study and also kind of at different levels in their academic professions. There's some people who had just recently received their PhDs and others who had been teaching for more than 10 years. So it added a really intriguing mix of people sharing their different experiences, whether it be with colleagues, whether it be with students, administration, but it allowed kind of for not only me to provide, the information I have to my colleagues, but also allowed us to kind of build a community where people could share their own experiences with each other. And that, that's one of the beautiful things about having these type of trips, is that as colleagues, we kind of tap into each other and kind of use each other as resources to the extent that, I'm a sociologist, but I may talk to someone in political science or in educational leadership or in English that has some insight on the same things I study or the same things I do, but from a different perspective. As far as the trip itself, one of the interesting things is that some of the things that I experienced as a participant were different from some of the things this group experienced. The trip was longer, so there was a little bit more free time, but at the same time, I realized that, on extensive, intense trips like this, people are going to get tired, whether you give them 2 days free or 5 days free, just because the pace is so fast and the information is so robust. But I think things were handled well. I know that there's a long stretch in the middle of the trip, and the adjustments from when I came as a participant to now, I think really helped deal with some of the issues like taking a larger bus, also just kind of over communicating with the participants. Make sure you bring these things, or make sure you consider these things, or make sure you stop here and get snacks, or just the little things that make the travel, the long travel, more fluid. You can't change the distance of the travel, but you can make the time go by a little smoothly just by some few adjustments that were made. So I really appreciated that. The quality, I can say some things were actually a little bit better from the time I went. I think it's just the practice, the familiarity with, and I don't want to give myself too much credit, but I think being able to have the experience of a participant and then helping co-lead, because I remember how I felt in a lot of those situations. So checking in with Marianne or Deliverance or Ali about questions that I knew I had to try to help, keep the participants like, oh, we're going to stop here soon. Or, here's the time where you can use the Wi-Fi, or, you might want to bring your laptop here. Things like that I think were useful in terms of making sure that the participants felt comfortable and also prepared. When you're in a new environment, you want to have as much of a semblance as familiarity as possible as you're dealing with new things. One thing that I appreciated this time that I didn't have the experience of last time is the location. Because we were staying, in downtown this time, there was much more to do every night. That was in walking distance. When I came, we were a little bit more isolated, so there were a few things we could go to, but there wasn't as much going on. So I kind of took it upon myself to take anybody who wanted to, go around to the markets or go to some of the events, to say, hey, I'll travel with you. I know the streets a little bit, but the fact that the location we stayed in was more downtown, there was just a lot more going on. So you can experience the things that happen at night, and also some of the things that happen in other areas of the city. As we traveled, we saw different, actually different neighborhoods. It's one thing to come to a city and just go into hotels and to the centers, but we were able to have the opportunity to actually travel in neighborhoods and see, not just the environment where people are trying to sell you something or there's tourist attractions in the area, but just day-to-day lives. We see school children going to school and coming home, and people doing things that give it a little bit more normalcy in terms of being a city instead of like an attraction or a destination. So I definitely appreciated the ability to kind of learn and experience Dakar, and especially in when we went to Tubacuta, and even the time we had in Sokone, it was really welcoming and inviting. It didn't feel like we were at a conference or a retreat. It felt like we were being welcomed as part of the community. What else?
Well,
A little bit, but again, I think everything was handled very well. I think my group was 13 and this group was 17. So with the larger group, again, like I said, I don't want to give myself like too much credit, but I think having an additional person helped in terms of.
It helped a whole lot. I mean, it's not just. It helped a whole lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those aspects that will definitely have Caorc factor in.
Yeah.
An integral part.
Yeah.
To just make sure either you or somebody else, comes, because the workshops that you did, everybody's been doing.
Thank you. Oh, one more thing I do want to say is that one thing I love about this experience is for faculty that want to do study abroad, it puts you in the position of your students, right? So it lets you see what getting up at 7 in the morning and having rigorous academic activities until 7 p.m. looks like, to help you plan out, how can I manage this for my students? How can I put a program together that's not going to tire them out so much that they're checking out, so we don't get all the information or all the amazing things covered. But also for me, coming back, it's helping me tune into some of the things that faculty advisors and faculty leads need to make sure they take care of when they want to take students. So I think in terms of me, ultimately I want to bring students here to Senegal. Getting this additional experience has actually helped me say, okay, if I want to build a program, these are the things that I'm going to look for in a partner. Warwick provides so much. I was talking to Marianne today after the program was over, and she was saying, some of the things that happen at Warwick we weren't even privy to, because our experience was everything was so well taken care of. But it made me mindful of saying, hey, if I want to do a study abroad, I want to make sure that not only am I covering stuff as a faculty, but also the different logistical things, relationships with drivers, any language barriers, or making sure that you're aware of the political climate in the area you're traveling to, are also things that not only you as the faculty lead have to handle, but whoever you trust as your third party or connector, whoever your people are on the ground, have to be aware of. So it was cool for the participants and to put themselves in the positions of their students, but also for me to kind of go a step further and to say, how do I facilitate a program besides just teaching content, right? How do I make sure that even if we're taking a walk through town, there's some things that I can point out that have, in my case, sociological impacts that students can pick up, so they can soak up everything possible, but at the same time balance it so they're not just so exhausted that, they're unable to continue going forward. So.